Moonleapers, a First Chapter Friday read aloud video with the word nerd and interview with the author, Margaret Peterson Haddix.
Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week we're going to be reading from Margaret Peterson Haddix's new book, Moonleapers, and then afterwards, make sure you stick around because we're going to get a chance to talk with Margaret about a lot of things. But one of the things we're going to talk about is the fact that she has written 50 books, and how does she come up with her ideas, and how does she keep everything all straight? That's at least one of the things I want to know. What do you want to know? You can email me, message me in the comments. You can email Margaret too. I have her email address down there as well. But today, we're going to talk about Moonleapers. Let me read you the back so you know what this story is about. Maisie's life is supposed to change when she finally gets a phone, even though it's a hand-me-down from a reclusive relative she doesn't remember. But as it turns out, the phone is a little odd. Between puzzling texts, riddles, and other unexpected gifts like this. Hi, my name is Amanda Zieba. Welcome to my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd, and another First Chapter Friday video. This week, we're going to be reading from Margaret Peterson Haddix's brand new book, Moonleapers. It's the first in a series, and it comes out September 16th, 2025. So if you're watching this ahead of time, you'll have to wait just a tiny little bit before you can get your hands on this book, and trust me, you're going to want to. You're also going to want to stick around after I'm done reading the first chapter because I'm going to have a chance to chat with Margaret about this book and a bunch of other things. One of the things I want to talk to Margaret about is the fact that she has written, and I discovered this when I opened the story, 50 books. You guys, that is so many books, and my brain is wondering, like, how do you come up with ideas for 50 books? How do you keep all of those ideas straight so that you don't come up with 50 of the same-ish sounding books? I'm going to ask her all those things and more, but first, I'm going to read you the first chapter of this story. And before I do that, I'm going to read you the blurb. That's the part on the back so we know what this story is about. Maisie's life is supposed to change when she finally gets a phone, even though it's a hand-me-down from a relative she doesn't even remember. But as it turns out, the phone is a little odd. Between puzzling texts, riddles, and other unexpected gifts, including a book that may or may not be completely blank, Maisie finds herself thrown into the world of Moonleapers. Will she be able to learn more about the secretive group and gulp, help them accomplish their crucial mission in time? I guess we'll find out when we read Moonleapers by Margaret Peterson Haddix. Chapter 1. Maisie, is that you? Mom's voice floated down from her second floor office as soon as Maisie pushed open the front door. Mom always asked that question when Maisie got home from school, and as always, Maisie was tempted to call back. Who else would it be? Dad was away on some business trip, also, as always, and Maisie's younger brother and sister, Rufus and Dora, were in the after-school latchkey program. Only Maisie at 12 was deemed old enough to come home on her own. For the next 3 hours, she'd have the entire house, except Mom's office, completely to herself. It was heaven. It was the best thing about being in sixth grade. Some days it seemed like the only good thing about being in sixth grade, but Maisie wasn't going to think about that right now. Not when she had 3 golden hours ahead of her, entirely to herself. No, Mom, it's not me. It's burglars come to steal our family treasures, Maisie called back, just loud enough that Mom could tell she'd answer, but not so loud that Mom should be able to make out actual words. Maisie liked giving snarky answers no one could hear. Yesterday, she said, it's trained assassins. And the day before that, she said, it's pirates of the high seas who read their maps wrong and somehow ended up in Ohio. And both times, Mom had only hollered back, great, welcome home, get a snack and do your homework, and I'll be down to hear about your day as soon as I can take a break. Mom never had time for a break. And that was quite all right with Maisie. Waiting until 6 o'clock to tell Mom about what had happened at school that day gave Maisie time to pretty up the story, to make it something that would worry anyone, to make it parent appropriate. Anyhow, by then, Mom would have forgotten to ask. Maisie stepped into the house and shut the door behind her. She dropped her backpack to the floor and listened for Mom's distracted, great, welcome home. But that wasn't the next sound that Maisie heard. Instead, a doorknob rattled upstairs from the direction of Mom's office. Maisie stood on her tiptoes and peered past the railing that separated the cathedral ceiling of the foyer from the second-story loft and the lineup of rooms on that floor. Mom was coming out of her office. Now, 3 hours early. Mom stepped over to the railing of the second-floor loft. Good thing we don't have any family treasures for burglars to steal, she called down to Maisie. Maisie gulped. You heard me? She all but whispered. Maisie, I always listen, Mom said, which didn't really answer the question. Maisie decided not to ask if Mom had heard Maisie's other snarky answers all along, because Mom turned right and began descending the stairs, and it was a sight to behold. Mom was tall and elegant and willowy, and she could make stepping past the homemade basketball net Rufus and Dora had stretched across the top step, and then a few steps down, dodging the Nerf basketball itself, look as graceful as ballet. Mom was also one of those people who believed she should dress up for work, even when she was working from home. So she was wearing a crisp white linen dress, each perfectly straightened strand of her rich dark hair bounced gently against her shoulders. Mom was even wearing high heels. It made Maisie remember that the elastic in her own right sock had given up the ghost in the middle of lunch, and it had sagged down to her purple sneaker. When Maisie reached it to tug it back up, she'd accidentally flipped a forkful of cafeteria spaghetti onto her khaki shorts, and using wet paper towels in the bathroom to scrub off the mess had only added a tinge of brown to the tomatoey stain. Anyhow, even without stains, Maisie's other clothes were always wrinkled and drooping or stretched out in all the wrong places, and unlike Mom, Maisie had a scribble-scrabble hair that seemed to have a mind of its own about sticking up or springing out into waves or curls at the oddest of times. Maisie could comb it and have it lying down perfectly flat, and then 3 seconds later, it would be going every which way again. This happened even on days like today when there was no wind, not even the slightest hint of a breeze. Mom had said once, Maisie, you've seen pictures of me when I was a kid, right? I look just like you at your age. That was probably supposed to give Maisie hope that someday she would grow out of always having saggy socks and messy hair and stains on her clothes. But mostly it just made her feel unfinished, incomplete. And what if she didn't want to grow up to be like Mom? Mom reached the bottom of the stairs and pivoted to lean elegantly against the newel post. Maisie, I wanted to talk to you before Rufus and Dora get home, Mom said. She lifted an eyebrow and gave Maisie a faint, mysterious smile. I have some good news and some bad news. What do you want first? Good, Maisie said quickly. Mom, and for that matter too, Dad, when he wasn't off traveling somewhere, always played the good news, bad news game. Maisie had learned a long time ago that good news was always something like, we've decided you can have half of a sugar-free, gluten-free faux chocolate candy bar as a special treat. And the bad news would be more like, we just realized that it's absolutely essential for you to learn ancient Greek, so we signed you up for 10 hours of class a week. You'll have to start getting up at 5 a.m. every day. Just since Maisie had started 6th grade, Mom and or Dad has signed her up to learn ancient Greek, French, Latin, Morse code, American Sign Language, formal logic, small engine repair, electronic circuitry, and computer coding. 4.5 bars of sugar-free, gluten-free faux chocolate didn't even begin to make up for all of that. But Maisie figured if there was any good news out there at all, she wanted it before the bath. And if you want to find out what happens next, you need to pick up your copy of Moonleapers, the newest book by Margaret Peterson Haddix. But right now, what we need to do is stick around so we can go and chat with Margaret, the author herself. Hello, readers. We are in for a treat today because we have an opportunity to talk with Margaret Peterson Haddix, the author of our first chapter Friday this week, her brand new book, Moonleapers. Margaret, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I am really excited. I was telling Margaret just before we hit record, I just got back from vacation and I found this book in my mailbox. It's out on September 25th. So this is an
16th.
16th. Oh, 16th. The side says 25th. So September 16th, even sooner, you can get your hands on this copy. And I loved it. And I've got a bunch of questions for Margaret. So we're just going to jump right into that. My first question is that when I open this book, there is a list of books that you have written, all of these. And when I went through, I realized that I'd read 5 of them. So I'm at the 10% club. But I'm curious, how do you come up with so many ideas And also, part B of that question is, how do you decide? Because I'm guessing you're gonna be like, oh, I get lots of ideas. How do you decide which idea is good enough to follow through for a story?
Yeah, you anticipated me saying, yes, I feel like there are ideas everywhere. There's just so much out there that's interesting and so many interesting possibilities. As far as choosing what I focus on and I'm like, okay, this will be the book that I do next. Um, It's often because an idea won't leave me alone.
Mm,
Or kind of with characters, the best situation is I start feeling like the character's standing behind me, bossing me around and
mm.
saying, well, that's not what I would do. I would do this. And that's definitely the ideal and how a lot of my books have been propelled. The other way that happens is I have a bunch of ideas and they're just kind of half formed and, kind of like blobby Play-Doh creatures almost that they're not complete ideas. They're not things that I put together or figured out. And a lot of times what ends up happening is that I will send possibilities to my editor or my agent, and they're the ones that say, "Oh, this one sounds very promising." And then I start focusing on it a little bit more.
Okay, well, that's great. Interesting that it's not just you involved in the process, right? That you've got
Yeah,
some,
yeah,
like a sounding board of people to help you pick the next best idea.
yeah, yeah.
My next question is also kind of a follow-up question, and that is with 50 books, with 50 characters and 50 plots, do you have any tips or tricks for how do you make them not all the same? How do you make this character very different from that character, very different from this school, very different, so that they all, and I know some of them are series, so you can like, have that continuation for some of them, but how do you keep it its own story?
That's something that I worry about sometimes because I definitely go back to a lot of the same themes. One time I was visiting a school and a sixth grader said to me, I know what every single one of your books is about, like what the common thread is. And I was like, do
Tell
tell. And what she said was secrets. You love secrets. And I was like, oh, you're right. Yeah, that's brilliant. You've totally analyzed my books that I love situations where there's someone trying to keep a secret or someone trying to find out a secret and other people standing in their way. And so that's definitely true. I do return to a lot of the same themes and sometimes a lot similar characters, but in terms of trying to keep it fresh, I can remember along about my trying to think what number book this would have been like 12 or so, a book called Double Identity. As I was writing, I was like, oh, I can't do this because I already did that in another book. And I was like, I'm going to run out of ideas here. And then maybe I shouldn't have thought that because life kind of dumped a bunch of kind of unique
me.
circumstances on me, things that I hadn't thought about as things that I would have to deal with or that characters would have to deal with. And I think you're always getting new experiences and being exposed to new ideas, and it makes you think about things in different ways. And I think that's the secret to having things be varied in terms of how you're dealing with the ideas in the books.
Yeah, I've heard sometimes that authors say, like, don't hang on to your best idea, like, don't save it, because once you use it, more will come to you, right? And so if you keep waiting for that perfect time for that one great idea, like, just like use it, spend the cash, right? And more will come to you.
Yeah, I think that is good advice. Although I will also say there are times, and maybe this is something that kids might be aware of, that there are times that you start writing an idea and you're like, I'm just not ready. I love this idea,
Oh,
but
yes.
I'm not capable yet of writing it. And it's
I
okay
have a
to
book
put
like
those ideas aside and come back to them, of course. But it's not necessary. You don't have to feel that pressure. If I don't write this now, it's not ever going to be written.
That's great advice. Absolutely. You had said one of your favorite things is secrets in books. One of my favorite things in books is when a book is about more than one thing. There are layers to the story. And this book, Moonleapers, does have a lot of different layers. And I'm curious how you kind of collected these things that could potentially seem random, and put them together. And then how did you decide like which layer was going to be center stage and like a little bit about that process? Because from the outside, if you said this is a book about this, 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 and this, and people are like, those don't go together. Um, So I'm curious about that process for you.
Yeah, I like how you asked that question, and I think you said it could potentially seem random. It probably is random still, but a lot of it is I'm kind of following a path of what I'm interested in, where I think ideas could lead. And I tend to do a lot of research along the way, and sometimes it's research that doesn't seem like it would fit very much. For example, with the Moonleapers, initially I having this idea of this girl getting these strange text messages. It's the first time she's ever had a cell phone, and of course she's excited about that, but then these strange text messages come in, and they don't seem like your typical scam text messages that you can just say, okay, this is a scam, leave me alone,
Mhm.
block, don't worry about it. It's something definitely beyond that. And some of it has connection to the nursery rhyme, Hey Diddle Diddle, which, is just kind of gibberish, really. And when I was starting to work on this book and I was kind of thinking that some of it might have a connection to that, I did research about what inspired that nursery rhyme and why that even exists and what people think it means. And nobody really knows. And I was like, oh, this is so right for me to use this for the
Right?
Moonleapers.
Awesome. Love that. I love those little research rabbit holes that turn up with story gold like that. In preparation for this interview, I was looking at your website and reading your bio, and one of your hobbies that you list is that you like going to museums. And I also like going to museums. I was a social studies minor, and so I'm always like looking at it. But when I'm there, I feel like I perhaps look at the exhibits differently than my husband or kids do because I'm a writer. And I wondered if you did that as well, and what that if you think that that's something all writers do, or why is museums, why are they at the top of your hobby list?
Well, I don't think it's something that all writers do because I have a very good friend who's a writer who hates museums. And we kind of have this running gag that I am constantly forcing her to go to museums with me. And she'll often admit, well, that one was okay. So I
Yeah,
always feel
yeah.
triumphant when that happens. But I love museums because they're trying to tell a story of something
Hmm.
interesting. And especially one of my majors in college was history. And
Yeah,
so I love history and I love those connections that you see. And history is basically a bunch of stories, and how
it
you
is.
present the past is telling a story. And it's kind of funny. Just last week, I went to a new museum that had just opened that was part of a state park that's kind of trying to tell the story of early settlers in Ohio who were American citizens or, from the East Coast, and then mixing with Native Americans who were here at the time, particularly the Shawnee tribe. And if you know anything about that era of our country's history, there was a lot of sadness and a lot of sorrow, a lot of battles, that kind of thing. And this museum was really trying to tell the story fairly and really trying to reflect various aspects of the story. And I so appreciated that it was trying to tell that in the full complexity, that
Mhm.
they were really trying to get at the truth of what really happened. And there was so much that I learned that I felt like my teachers did a fairly good job of
Yeah,
teaching that era of history when I took it a million years ago when I was in school, but it was such a richer story there. And so I just feel like going to a museum, seeing how the story is told is really important.
yeah, absolutely. And also lots of ideas, right? They're
Oh
everywhere.
yes,
All those little
yes.
details could end up in the story.
And all those things that, you see, this law was passed or
Yeah,
this act was enacted, and it wasn't just an abstract thing. It changed people's lives. It would be something that this happened to this person. And I love seeing individual stories within the context of the broader picture.
absolutely. Museums are a great venue to do that. My last question for you is I know that you have an event tonight. And also, when I was reading your website, you had said that you went into journalism because you felt like authors lived in this faraway magical fairyland that real people didn't get to go to. And I can so very much relate to that, which is a huge reason why I invite authors onto my channel to show kids like these are real people. This is a real job. Um, So, kind of a two-part question. One, what do you love most about in-person author events like the one you're going to tonight? And two, I know that you're doing a book tour for Moonleapers. Can you tell us which states you'll be in? And so, if my viewers are listening and they're like, "That's my state," maybe they can look it up and come and meet you in person.
I always actually answer that backwards, so I don't forget
Oh,
the
okay.
second part of the question. But I will be in Wake Forest, North Carolina. I will be in the Nashville area, Tennessee, Chicago area, St. Louis area, and probably, I'm not 100% sure about this yet, but probably Ann Arbor, Michigan. So that will be the book tour, and it will be September 15th through 20th, I guess, or no, 22nd, 23rd, somewhere in through there. So that will be the timing. And I will post about that on my on social media, and then it will also be on my website. As far as what I love about doing in-person author events is when I'm writing a book, it's a very solitary thing. And I'm writing about ideas or situations that I'm really excited about. And the process of writing is a way to share it with other people. I don't always I don't always see the people. Like some people write to me or email me, but
Yeah.
that's not that often. With compared to how many events I do, with an event, it's like we're having a conversation and people can ask
Yeah.
questions and I can directly answer them right then about why I did something, or why this character did that particular activity, that kind of thing.
So fun. Yes, it's more of a, like you said, it's a conversation. It's a back and forth. It's not so one-sided. So awesome. Well, readers, if you are in those areas, keep an eye on Margaret's social media and website so that you can find out details and go and support her and get your own copy of Moonleapers. I said that was the last question, but I had one more. Are you working on anything new? And if a reader has a question that they want to send to you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
I am working on what will be not I have a book that's coming out next year that will be the sequel to Moonleapers, and maybe I should have
Okay.
mentioned that. And then I've just started working on the book that will come out in 2027. It sounds crazy to me to even mention the year
Yes.
2027, but that will be when that book comes out. And as far as if readers want to get in touch with me, I do have my email address on my website that you can just click on the contact section and you can just type it in there, and then that will get to me. And hopefully, I will hear from people. So, yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
awesome. Well, I'll make sure that I link your website down below in the video description box. But Margaret, thank you so much for another amazing story and for joining us here on Learning with the Word Nerd today. Readers, we will see you again next week for another First Chapter Friday video. Happy reading!
Thank you. Bye.
To continue reading Moonleapers by Margaret Peterson Haddix, pick up a copy from your school library, purchase it from your favorite local indie bookstore, or grab it via the Amazon link down in the video description box. Then be sure to check out the rest of the First Chapter Friday videos I've got ready and waiting for you. We're up to over 200 middle grade and young adult novels. Thanks so much for visiting my channel, Learning with the Word Nerd. Please like this video and subscribe, and I hope to see you again next week for another First Chapter Friday video.